Hello and welcome to Obscure Movie Reviews, where we love to take a look at some of the more unknown and ambiguous titles in cinema history. Here we focus on movies that are hard to find, on the older side, relatively unknown, or perhaps they simply lack in popularity. So write your wedding vows and dress your turkey as we take a bite out of Son-in-Law. When Rebecca Warner leaves her conservative family farm and heads off to college in California, she starts to miss home almost immediately, and within a month, she is ready to call it quits. That is until the intervention of Crawl, her dorm's resident advisor and perpetual student. Crawl compels her to give it a real chance and make some changes, much to her family's chagrin. Son-in-Law was released in 1993 to mixed reviews, with some critics calling it overly formulaic and others surprised by the amount of depth it has. Let's see which side of the aisle proves right. While technically starring Pauly Shore, the truth is that the movie isn't really about him. But given that he's credited as the star of the film, his character is a good place to start. Shore plays Crawl, a goofy surfer bro type that was stereotypical in the early 90s. Shore's brand of humor is certainly not for everyone, but despite the wild antics, he is genuinely funny in this film, even if he's bizarre at times.
He's weird.
I found him mostly goofy when I watched this film as a kid, but now I couldn't help but wonder if he was supposed to be high all the time. But that's only from his behavior, because it doesn't look like he's supposed to be, with himself making comments now and then about the issues with drugs.
You see that? Huh? You see what happens? The ink soaks in the system and the guy's freaked out. Look at him. What are you freak?
The cast rounds out nicely with veteran actors like Mason Adams and Lane Smith, who are more well known for dramatic roles and work perfectly as Becca's grandfather Pappy and father Walter, respectively. I always remember Lane Smith from Lois and Clark for his portrayal of Perry White. Cindy Pickett plays Connie, Becca's mother, who for years I did not recognize, but that's because she's always far more glamorous in her other films, particularly in movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Here, they have worked hard to make her look as plain as possible. And frankly, it gives her something unique to do, having her actual acting talent showcased more than her elaborate costumes or hairstyles. There are some corny portrayals. While any moments of weak acting I can usually forgive, I always struggle with Dan Gauthier as Travis. Gauthier would go on to have a lot of long-term success in soap operas, but here there's just something off. While his character is filled with pretense, I can't help but feel that he's just really wooden and fake. The standout performance is probably from Carla Gugino, who plays Becca. While Shore may be the star of the film, Gugino is the heart of it, and the character that goes through the most significant growth. It's interesting to note that she didn't originally want to take the role, feeling a comedy might negatively impact her goals of being a serious actress, but has since stated just how much fun it was to work on. I'm glad she made the choice because her fun, heartfelt performance is what takes the acting in this film and elevates it. A film that otherwise would have been rather average instead gets a 6 out of 10 for having above average performances. Son-in-Law runs for 135 minutes, which is pretty typical for an early 90s comedy. We get introduced to the family within the first few minutes. By the time the Crawl appears, which is only about 10 minutes in, you already know Becca and her family really well. From there, the film fast forwards about a month, then quickly goes a month further, but despite the time jumping, it doesn't feel rushed. We see changes happening that start with a simple shopping spree, hair changes, and eventually a personality shift. But it all feels rather natural. Things slow down quite a bit once the film moves back to the farm, but not in a bad way. When dealing with a fish out of water story, it's important to let moments breathe that really show exactly how far out of the depth this fish is. And this film does it pretty well. Slow when it needs to be, amped up when appropriate. That'll score at a 7 out of 10 for having good pacing. The film was directed by Steve Rash, who began his career with the Oscar-nominated film The Buddy Holly Story, but surprisingly only has 16 directing credits to this date, most of which are screwball comedies, not too different from Son-in-Law in scope. Peter Deming is the director of photography, who has an extensive resume that includes some large-scale productions like Cabin in the Woods and Oz the Great and Powerful. They do a good job of showing off the claustrophobic nature of college dorm living, as well as the wide open spaces of the country life. The farm itself doesn't seem to have a specific aim or direction, making it sort of a typical Hollywood farm. They raise chickens and pigs, grow corn, and have a single cow, which I can say from years of living in the country myself is a little odd, but I digress. More importantly, this family farm just feels huge. There are some well-crafted shots that show the consistent style of Steve Rash, but nothing that shows off the more impressive work that Deming would bring to Hollywood. For that reason, it'll score a 5 out of 10 for having average cinematography. Richard Gibbs brings his musical talents to Son-in-Law in some great ways. If the name sounds familiar, I wouldn't be surprised because he has a pretty interesting career, being a member of the band Oingo Boingo, as well as having performed with Korn, Chaka Khan, and Tom Jones, on top of composing music for over 70 films and TV shows to date. The music is definitely a highlight of the film. Between Gibbs' score, which is catchy and memorable, and the use of popular rock and country themes from that period, the film is really elevated by the soundtrack. So while it isn't likely going to go down in history as Gibbs' best work, he didn't phone it in either. Son-in-Law will score an 8 out of 10 for having a really good soundtrack. So here's the basic premise. Rebecca Warner leaves the farm and goes to California to begin her college career and try something truly new. While there, she struggles with the atmosphere and has trouble finding ways to fit in, becoming a bit of a wallflower. However, she's noticed by her wild and zany resident advisor, Crawl, who explains that he was once just like her and suggests that she learn to mingle with the people and try really embracing the college experience. That's all well and good until it's time to go home for Thanksgiving. And Becca, as her friends now affectionately call her, discovers that Crawl doesn't have anywhere to go for the holiday. On a whim, Becca takes Crawl home for the holidays with her, and the shenanigans ensue. Crawl now becomes the one out of place, attempting to fit in. Matters are complicated when Travis, Becca's high school boyfriend, attempts to propose to her, which she is definitely not ready for, but apparently also not emotionally mature enough to simply say no. Crawl comes to her rescue in the worst way possible by claiming to already be engaged to her. By today's standards, this plot is directly out of a Hallmark film. But at the time, it was a rather fresh concept, made even more original by the character type that Pauly Shore always plays in his films. Fortunately, the plot isn't complicated, but like most romantic comedies, a lot could be solved by simply being honest and straightforward. There is that misunderstanding moment toward the end that's so common in romantic comedies, but here it's handled far better because it doesn't linger too long before a solution is found, and the misunderstanding would likely have fooled anyone involved. So you don't have to stretch your imagination for it. All of the major players go through subtle character arcs, mostly just bringing out the best parts of themselves, with Crawl's probably being the smallest arc, while Becca's is the most pronounced. It's sort of interesting to see that while Crawl wants Becca to lighten up, have fun, and experience the world, he doesn't truly want to change her or her family. He's actually rather intrigued by the whole country lifestyle and aesthetic. He even has notes of his own brand of conservatism show up from time to time, being concerned about Becca getting a tattoo and even chastising her at one point for checking out another guy, knowing she has a boyfriend back home. Early on, Becca takes on several of Crawl's mannerisms, like calling her parents by their first names, but eventually stops, symbolizing a repair in their fractured relationship. And though there's a certain lack of consequences present, there's definitely a sense of resolution. And in the end, it's both funny and feel good, giving it a 7 out of 10 for being a good story. While the film's initial reception was mixed from critics, it was definitely a hit with fans. With a budget of just $8 million, it made a box office return of approximately $36.4 million, so it was definitely deemed a success, and it's received a cult following since. Star Carla Gugino has said that to this day, she's still often asked about this film from fans, so that says something about its endurance. Many consider it a Thanksgiving classic, and have even made it part of their regular holiday traditions, and in recent years, I'm one of those too. I love it as a holiday transitional film, moving away from the scary movies of October and toward the Christmas movies of December. And since my eldest daughter has recently become engaged, I hold it close for some newly sentimental reasons as well. But if you enjoy the unique movie experience that is early 90s comedies, you'll probably be watching this over and over again, which is why it gets a 9 out of 10. I was a young kid when Pauly Shore was at the height of his fame, and I can't say that I got into many of his films, though I was aware of most of them. This, however, was really enjoyable to me as a kid, and continues to be, probably more so as an adult. Growing up in the country, it was interesting to see a fish out of water story where someone was coming into the life I understood and being totally out of their element. I always found that profoundly humorous. Even if you're not a fan of Shore's zany kind of humor, I think you'll find something quite enjoyable about this one. So, it'll get an 8 out of 10 for just being really good. Overall, Son-in-Law will score a 7.14 out of 10 for being a good to really good movie. So, as you prepare your holiday festivities, maybe check this film out. And then
Much on some grinding!
Thanks everyone for watching this episode of Obscure Movie Reviews. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure that you like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to get the latest videos, and be sure to check out our other fun content.
So you're saying you likes?
Likes.